I'm Alan Robarge, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist, and I like to talk about attachment injuries and healing attachment trauma. And this video is about doing healing work, and I'm framing it and thinking about it in terms of healing work that works. And the guiding principle, the foundational idea is that of self-directed healing. That's what I teach, that's what I promote, which means you're in the driver's seat. You have to access your wisdom self. You have to access your intuitive, innate healer self. And it's from this place of knowing and cultivating the skills to identify where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, that you begin to assemble some resources around maturing and personal growth, which that's what healing work is. Healing work is to consciously participate in your own maturing, and to consciously participate in raising your awareness to your vulnerabilities of your own life experience, your felt sense experience. And oftentimes we bump into what's painful, what hurts, what ails us, the conflict, the tension, and the beliefs that limit our world. And this is about being miserable. This video is about being miserable. And this video is about having had so much life experience that you very much have adopted an attitude of life sucks. And that is legitimate. That is real. We, I'm assuming, have evidence, data, story, history, memories that very much equal and conclude why you feel miserable, very much equal and conclude why life sucks. So we're not challenging that you feel this way, and we're not challenging that it's based upon a history of truth. That's a given. This video is about how we over-identify with the feeling state to the point that we internalize it and we become that feeling state. And I am my misery. The misery is who I am. Life sucks, so therefore my life will always suck. I suck. Everything sucks. So if you cross the line after years and years, it becomes very blurry. We internalize the woundedness to the point where we become the woundedness. So if you think in terms of self-directed healing, which is about chapters, and I call them stages of transformation, and you step back and look at, well, what stage are you currently in? Where are you at in this process? There will be a time after you have inventoried the difficult experience of living in misery, and after you have looked at some of the puzzle pieces and the data and the evidence and the memories coming out of denial, getting some spacious, a little bit of maneuverability, a little bit of sophistication of how to work with the intensity of such crushing misery. Again, it's valid, it's true, it happened, you're living it, you've lived it. It is painful. We're not denying that it's painful. We're not denying it's difficult. We're not denying that it happened. However, something occurs in our mind where we become the thing that is so difficult. We become the misery. And if we have a core belief that life sucks, and therefore my life sucks, it's like putting on certain glasses, and instead of putting on rose-colored eyeglasses, we're putting on, life is miserable glasses. And then we start to collect new evidence and see new patterns that are going to be in alignment with reinforcing the old belief, the old story, all the other data and evidence of life is full of misery, my life is miserable, my life sucks, it's going to continue to suck, and this is just the way it is. This is a story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and as we tell the story continually, we become it. I am it. I'm my misery. So this video is the invitation, and this might be a little advanced because not everybody's at a place to do this right now, and if you're not, I'm planting the seed to say, heads up, this is on the horizon. You have a moment where you confront miserable self. You have a moment where you confront life sucks self. And you say, miserable self, I cannot live through seeing the world through the lens of misery anymore. I am no longer going to be the woundedness. I'm no longer going to be, only experiencing myself through the gateway, through the lens, through the conduit of the wound. There are other ways of being. So I like to think about healing work as you move through it and you use the suffering itself to wake yourself up. And it's the pain and how it's so provocative and it sets you on fire and it's unsettling and you no longer can keep doing the same thing that you've been doing, and you need to walk through and begin to maneuver the difficult, challenging, find the path of your suffering. Find the path out of your suffering. And in order to do that, we use the suffering itself to give us clues, to wake us up. It's like a messenger. It has a message. Listen to the message. And we build a raft that takes us to the other shore of the river. And when we're at the other shore, we don't carry the raft. We even let that go. At some point, we put down believing that our wounded self is the only self that will show up in the world, that our miserable nature is going to stay with us, that it is solid and permanent. I am the misery, I will be miserable, I'm the feeling, therefore it's, the feeling is me. And we begin to separate out that we don't have to over-identify with the wounded experience. But in order to do that, it's a little tricky and it's a challenge because it means intimately saying goodbye from a heartfelt, loving place, a tender-hearted place, a compassionate place, to look at miserable self in the eyes and give miserable self a honest, genuine, sincere hug and say, genuine self, I'm leaving you at the shore. And we were such good friends for so long. I know you so intimately. You know me. We've kept each other company for so long. But I cannot continue to walk through life and to go through my maturing and through my growth and to manage all the challenges that life brings and only experience them through the lens of the misery. And so I need to say goodbye. This is a grief process. This is a healing process. This invites ritual and mourning practices. And in order to say goodbye to miserable self, you have to be willing to keep walking and to invite spaciousness and openness and possibility and freedom and insight and creativity, joy, letting in joyful self. Because if we are only limiting ourselves to staying stuck and oriented in miserable self, we're not living. We're only reflecting back life through the experience of being a wounded person. Now, of course, this is potentially easier said than done. It's more than setting intention and saying that I'm doing it. But the intention can go a long way. And if we at least set that as a goal, plant the seed, just use it as, something that you're working towards. And this is, quite honestly, one reason why many people don't do healing work and would much rather be the miserable self for the rest of their life. Because it requires a profound amount of courage and bravery to open to the groundlessness of being untethered, which means entering a place of not really knowing who you are. You'd have to be able to say goodbye to miserable self and welcome this groundless non-self, this transition self, as you get your footing and figure out, well, who am I then? If I'm not miserable self, if I'm not overly identified with my woundedness, then who would I be? Now, some people, a good number of people, don't want to ask that question. It's too frightening. And would much rather cling to being miserable self, because at least it's a self. And I'm challenging that and saying, well, it's not at least it's a self. When the suffering is too much, when it's too painful, when you're on fire with your own crushing experience of life repeatedly is only telling you that it's miserable, you might need to really confront the reality of how you're orienting through the misery. And that means saying goodbye to miserable self. I hope that this video is helpful. It's part of a series. I'm exploring some brainstorming ideas around healing work that works and that's guided by the principle of self-directed healing. Now, everything I'm talking about is content, core content, ideas that are part of a membership community I have created called Improve Your Relationships. And there's a community of people who are committed to being courageous and committed to having a plan of action and committed to holding themselves accountable to walking a path of self-directed healing. And in our community, it's an 8-week program that recycles. There's every week a new topic of discussion. Every week there's some suggested activities. There are resources, there's handouts, there's worksheets. There are 180 videos as resources that you could use to explore a number of different ideas about relationships and healing work. But we all come together because we have one thing in common, is that we do not want to continue to stay recycling, cycling, looping in our life's misery. And that does require the very challenging, sometimes frightening work of looking at a sense of self and saying, I'm even saying goodbye to my sense of self and how I orient. And I'm doing this to invite discovering a new sense of self, new skills, new resources, orienting a little differently. If this interests you, if you'd like to join us and jump into these conversations, we would love to have you. Learn more and register at alanrobarge.com/community. More videos to come just like this one, and thank you for watching.